In real time, you got to figure out how to win. You got to make adjustments. You got to make sure your players are confident enough to turn the page and get to the next thing, so it doesn't impact, what's happening in real time. So, I mean, they're still very young, still a young group as far as how much time they've been together, but they're growing up.
Welcome onto the sideline, everybody. Matt Dowell and Jared Parker are back with you in the studio as SEC Hoops has begun for Gamecock men's and women's basketball. So, Jared, welcome into the studio. Hope everyone had a great New Year. And this is funny because you and I haven't seen each other in like 3 weeks or something because of the holiday. So we got here at the station to record this episode, and I was like, oh, hey, how have you been the past 3 weeks of your life? So good to see you, first of all, friend. And let's talk some hoops. And just to kind of set the stage for this podcast, the next few months, really, basketball is going to be our main focus. We'll have 2 episodes every week. On Sundays, will be recap analysis episodes of that week in basketball for both Gamecock teams. And then every Thursday, I'll have an interview with someone in the Gamecock basketball community, with the men or women. Our last episode, in case you missed it, was with Destiny Littleton, the former Gamecock basketball player who, of course, was part of that 2022 national championship team. It was great to talk to her, so go check out that conversation. But today, Jared, we're talking the start of conference play for South Carolina men's and women's basketball. And I'm going to be honest, we're always going to start with the women because they are the powerhouse program. They are the top 5 team. They are the program that frankly has earned the right to be first in all of our rundowns and all of our conversations. And so we're going to start with Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks. And we will recap both games. Just a quick recap of the Bama game first, and then get into today's game against Florida, and then we'll talk about the guys when we're done with that. But, South Carolina, Jared, opened the season with opened conference play, I should say, with wins over Alabama and Florida. Yeah. Thursday's game, New Year's Day, was at the CLA, and today's game was down in Gainesville. But let's start with the game against the Crimson Tide. I thought South Carolina, should be really happy with that win. Yeah. It was a great New Year's Day crowd at the CLA. Conference play is different. It just brings a different energy. Even if you think South Carolina should whoop so-and-so team, it doesn't always work that way with any team. It's just different. These teams and coaches and staffs, they just know each other's games so well. So Alabama was a team that was undefeated, but I was kind of like, okay, how good are they really? Because their schedule was not great. And Dawn Staley said going into the game, they're always gritty. They always kind of play, make you work and make you fight. And I thought Alabama played really, really well. South Carolina went into halftime with, a 6-point lead, 8-point lead, something like that. A single-digit lead is what it was. And then I thought they played great in the second half. It was a great team effort. And we should say they are without Tania Latson. So that's a huge piece of their starting lineup puzzle. But I thought the Gamecocks adjusted well and got a nice, comfortable, in the end, 83-57 win over Alabama. So I thought it was a great start to conference play for South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned team effort, because when we talk about that, when that was the number one thing that was on my mind, it was a real team win, especially, like you said, without Tania Latson, as prolific of a scorer as she is. Obviously, she's still new to South Carolina, but, I mean, they played a whole non-conference schedule with her, so then to lose her going into the conference play, not that there was huge doubt on whether or not they'd win the game, but it did add some doubt because you're missing a starter. Agat McKeer stepping in as a freshman,
and played great.
It's a lot to ask for a freshman to be like, hey, this is your first game you're going to start. And by the way, it's our SEC opener, so this kind of matters a lot. But I think it was an awesome team effort, and they did well to step up in Latson's absence.
Yeah, it was great. And I do think through that game, and especially the Florida game, so I guess, that's kind of, you guys have analyzed that game by now, and, you guys know how that played out. But I thought it was a really, really solid SEC opener for South Carolina. Not perfect, but who is, in January, there's going to be some ups and downs, especially with a young team the way South Carolina is. But I do think, especially as we move in to talk about today's game against Florida, I think today was maybe when we saw Latson's absence the most. Because I think when you look at the grand scheme of this team, they are very young. They do not have a ton of experience. Raven is one of those, obviously. And then Latson is the other big experienced player. I know Joyce played in the tournament last year and stuff, but she's still a sophomore, and she has not had this big of a role yet at this point in her career. So I thought today, when things were chaotic and things were ugly, and Tessa is the other, the vet, I should say too, but it was really up to those two to kind of settle things down, I felt like, and Latson would have been another piece just to add another scoring option, another solid piece. But Jared, when you look at today's game in Gainesville, it was ugly. It was stressful. It was not fun. It's not a game that I think Gamecock fans are going to go back and want to watch again. But at the end of the day, South Carolina wins it by 11, 74-63. I don't know if I ever really felt like they were in trouble to lose this game, but credit to Florida, because Florida made them work. Florida made them battle. Florida kept it close-ish in that fourth quarter to still make everybody nervous. And if South Carolina had made a couple mistakes, if Florida had gotten some turnovers, it could have been a very different ending. But South Carolina escaped with that 11-point win. What are your thoughts from this win over the Gators, and what was a heart-palpitating win for South Carolina?
I mean, big credit to Liv McGill on the Gators, of course.
Scrappy team.
You see why, because she's leading, and she does not take a possession off on either side of the ball. So when you have a leader like that, it's going to make it tough for anyone when she's leading the pack like that. But it's like you said, I think it's fair to say it was an ugly win, because it was. But the caveat to that is it's a win. And that's, you move on. You survive, you advance, you're 2-0 in SEC play. You're still atop the leaders. As you said, Raven Johnson, just a consummate professional, really. She looked like a professional, calming effort for them in kind of a chaotic start at the end there. I thought Agat McKeer, great first conference game. I think her getting used to whatever role she's trying to fit in. You could see she looked a little unsettled at the start of the game, a couple of quick turnovers, then got subbed out for Maddie McDaniel. I don't think that's a huge deal. She's a freshman. We've seen the freshmen kind of get lost here and there. But yeah, I think I like that Tessa Johnson kept shooting even though she wasn't having a great game. She's one of the best shooters in the nation. I think for her, like, you don't stop shooting, because she's going to have those games where you go 2 for 9, but one of those games it's going to be 5 for 9 and 6 for 9. So survive, advance, you leave Gainesville with a W and come back home. So.
And first conference game on the road, and it's always different on the road in conference play. And for a lot of these young players, this was their first time seeing that. They played road games, but it's just different when it is conference play. A couple of things I wanted to point out was that Joyce Edwards, in absence of Chloe Kitts and Ashlyn Watkins, of course, has had to play a much bigger role this season. And she was always going to play a big role in this year, but now it's even larger. And I think we're going to have the microscope on her because she is forced, to be a go-to player this season. This wasn't a great game for Joyce. There was a lot of young mistakes on her part. There were some questionable decision-making. But, Jared, and I know that, a lot of the fans are saying, can be critical of that. Again, though, just a sophomore. But she still finished with 11 points and 10 rebounds. Which, for me, the big criticism with Joyce, from my part, where I want to see her get better, is rebounding. I know she can score the ball, but can she rebound? I think 25 points and stuff is really impressive. But when you have 3 or 4 rebounds to go with that, I'm kind of like, okay, where's the disconnect on that part of it? Offensive, defensive rebounding. So the fact that she wasn't putting up crazy points, but was still fighting for rebounds, and in that fourth quarter was still trying to make plays, I think there's a lot of growth in this game in particular from Joyce. And she's going to you're always going to have games like this. Any player's going to go through it. You have to learn how to play through those kinds of games. And I thought this game is going to be one that Joyce is going to learn a lot from, because she didn't play great, but she also had to figure out ways to impact the game in other ways, especially down the stretch. And I thought she did that. So I know, and I was kind of surprised when I looked at the final box score, and I said, wait, she had a double-double? I said, whoa, I mean, a bad game and you have 11-10, a lot of turnovers, which isn't great. But I think for such a young player who is in the spotlight and has to be a go-to player the way she has to this season, I think there are a lot of really good learning lessons for Joyce in this game in particular.
Absolutely. And what I love about it is she stayed in it. She stayed in the game. Like that one block, she had the block. Eventually lost it, but at the end of the day, that's still a great play to go up, get the block, and get the rebound all in one. She stayed in the game. She never mentally looked checked out. And I think that's the the best you can do when you're not having a fantastic shooting night necessarily or turning over the ball. Just stay in there, keep giving effort. Because, I mean, like I said with Tessa, you're not always going to have those bad shooting days. Yeah. So I love that she stayed in it, and I think that showed a ton of growth from her.
Absolutely. I think the other stats that from a bad point of view, because, again, this was not a fun game to watch, just quite frankly. And let me say this. In 5 months of a basketball season, there's going to be ugly games. It is just part of the territory. It's part of the sport. When you play 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes you're going to lay a stinker, but you want to win the stinkers, and that's what they did. They just had to win, and but they had 21 turnovers, Jared. 21, and a lot of them are just bad mistakes. I don't know what was going on. There's a lot of miscommunication, but that was probably the biggest concern today, and I think that is really what made their lives harder today was the turnovers that were self-inflicted, which is kind of what we saw at the start of the season, that they've gotten better at cleaning up. So I was surprised to see so many mental mistakes from the Gamecocks in this game. But again, you have to battle through it. And, some of that is Florida's defense, and some of that was Florida playing really well. Other parts of it, though, were just... I don't know. It just was kind of mind-boggling decision. A 10-second violation, just things like that you're like, all right, is everyone locked in the way you want them to be? So that wasn't great. But on the other end, the rebounding, 59-36. It was a huge rebounding game from South Carolina. Okot had 12 points and 17 rebounds, and we talked about Joyce. But those were kind of the other stats that stood out to me from this game.
Right. I think the biggest concern with this game is when you do out-rebound an opponent by 23. And, I mean, although they committed a lot of turnovers, the turnover difference was 1. It was 21-20. Yeah. You should probably win a lot more comfortably than they won today.
Rebounding well, but not shooting well, which was the issue.
Yeah, it was great that they got their own rebounds very often, but you really don't want to be in a position to need to grab your rebounds that often. But, I mean... can't criticize them too much for that because they did grab the rebounds, and whether it was a second or a third chance, they got it in.
A couple other stats that stood out of this game. Raven Johnson was 17 points for the second straight game. Her career high is 18. So she's had 2 straight games with big-time scoring numbers. She led the Gamecocks in this game. Tessa Johnson with 15. Like you said, she didn't shoot amazingly well, but still put 15 on the scoreboard, so that's pretty good. And my other thing before we hear from Dawn Staley after this win over Florida is that upsets are contagious, and this has been one of the craziest weeks in the regular season of women's basketball that I have ever seen. Number 5 goes down. Number 6 goes down. Number 7 goes down. Number 8 goes down. At the time of this podcast recording, Iowa State and Baylor, Iowa State had just hit a 3 to tie it at 70 with like 30 seconds to go. So I have no idea if Iowa State has lost at this point in time. But Jared, pretty much half the top 10 lost this week. And majority of, a few of them losing to unranked teams. Yeah. And upsets are contagious. So if you're South Carolina, you're just saying, all right, we didn't get caught in the upset bug. We got through it. We won, and winning is all that matters. But this is a week that has been crazy. And, teams can say, okay, they lost, and they lost, and they lost. We don't want to lose, and that can almost make you nervous. So South Carolina was tested by an unranked opponent, but they got it done. And I have to say, I got to do my AP ballot later tonight. No clue what I'm going to do. I have no clue where everyone is going to go. But I do have to say, South Carolina is going to stay where they are because they got the win. But this has been a crazy week, and that can impact teams when they see all of that going down. And South Carolina did not let the upset bug catch them today.
Yeah, I don't envy you having to.
It's going to be rough. It's going to be fun. I'm not looking forward to it.
I'm glad I get to just watch and be like, I wonder where everyone's going to end up.
I was trying to pick your brain before this. I was like, okay, maybe they go there. Maybe they go there. I don't know. But what I do know is right now, the top 4, it should stay the same between UConn, Texas, South Carolina, and UCLA, who to me at the moment look a tier ahead of everybody right now.
I agree. And I think weeks like this are where you see the teams that truly have the experience, that little championship kind of aura to them, because it's those teams that don't lose during the weeks like this. So when you have the Raven Johnsons and the Tessa Johnsons that have been through this before, those are the players that keep you from losing a game where everyone else is losing to unranked and lower ranked teams.
Yeah, it has been a crazy week, one of the craziest I've seen in women's basketball in a long time. But South Carolina again survives Florida 74-63. Here's what Dawn Staley had to say after this tough, gritty win that the Gamecocks really had to fight for.
You got to find a way to win the game, no matter how ugly it looks. And then you win ugly and you go home and you figure some things out, and hopefully you can correct some things and hope that it doesn't lead to another performance like this. But I like the win. I like the win at the end. I mean, they're all going to be like this. Like, they're not going to be like, we just going to walk through and win games by 30 points. That is not how it's going to be in our league. But, I mean, we knew it was going to be a tough game. Last time we were here, we were down big. Like, it might have been double digits. You remember? Last time we were double digits, early, double digits. So we reminded our players of that. I don't think any of them were on the team, maybe Raven. So, I mean, we keep that in the back of our minds, and just, in real time, you got to figure out how to win. You got to make adjustments. You got to make sure your players are confident enough to turn the page and get to the next thing, so it doesn't impact, what's happening in real time. So, I mean, they're still very young, still a young group as far as how much time they've been together, but they're growing up.
Okay, during that soundbite, I looked up who won Iowa State Baylor, and Baylor won. So that is half the top 10 lost this week.
One.
There you go. That one, not as surprising. That was a ranked matchup, but you just never know, and that's why you got to lock in every single day. South Carolina is at Arkansas on Thursday before coming home next Sunday to take on Georgia. But I should say, before we move on to the guys, Jared, Alicia Tournebize is in the house. She arrived to Columbia, actually New Year's Day, the day that they beat Alabama. She is 6'7". She is obviously, I can't do the joke. You go for it. I'm not doing it. I can't get into it. No, you got to do it. Do it. I don't care. But Tournebize, of course, bringing pro experience. She's bringing height and, frankly, just more depth to the roster. We don't know exactly when she is going to play. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she doesn't play against Arkansas, and maybe they're trying to get her ready for Georgia. Give her a little bit over a week to kind of get acclimated to Columbia, but we'll see when she's ready to go, and we'll see when Latson is fully healthy again. But I'm thinking maybe they let Latson and Alicia rest for Arkansas, because frankly they're going to be the heavy favorites against Arkansas, and then maybe have them ready to go for Georgia. That's just my 2 cents. I know nothing. I have not talked to anybody, but I'm just wondering when they're gonna put her on the floor, because I'm excited to see her play.
Yeah, I mean, well, they wasted no time. I know Dawn said she had to get with Molly in the strength room.
Yeah.
And we saw the other day, Molly posted her working out. So they wasted zero time in getting her acclimated to the world-class South Carolina strength program that, everyone raves about. But yeah, I think the hype is here. I mean, we've been asking ever since she made that commitment, when she's going to be here, when she's going to be here. So I think if she can be there, Georgia, and I know Don Staley said she hadn't started to learn the plays quite yet, but she comes from a pro background. So
yeah.
I seriously doubt that her learning plays would be a big issue with the type of experience she has. And just with her skill set, I mean, pick and roll. Do you need a play? Just pick and roll and make it work.
Yeah, and I said this in our last podcast episode too. Even if she comes off and plays 4 or 5 minutes a game, that still is letting some bodies rest, in the starting lineup. So I don't know. She's a pro. She has a lot of experience. I think she's going to contribute pretty heavily. I don't think this is going to be, like we saw with Chloe or some of the other freshmen who come in as basically still high school seniors, but technically freshmen in the college world, where, maybe they're not quite physically or fundamentally ready to play that much. But I think Alicia Tournebize, I expect her to contribute more than maybe those freshmen in years past. But again, South Carolina at Arkansas on Thursday. They're back here in Columbia next Sunday to host Georgia. Jared, anything else you want to say about the women before we move on to Lamont Paris and the guys?
Man, just keep shooting. Keep shooting. It'll work out for them. I hope none of them get discouraged after the shooting numbers today.
And it was kind of honestly an outlier, because this team has shot pretty high percentages all season long. This was just a woefully bad shooting night.
Yes.
Hopefully it's an outlier and something that's not going to continue for the Gamecocks going forward. Okay, let's talk about Lamont Paris and South Carolina men's basketball, because they opened their SEC season yesterday on Saturday against Vanderbilt, who of course came into Columbia undefeated, and they left undefeated, Jared, because they won this one pretty convincingly. South Carolina showed some fight there towards the end of the first half, but it was really all Commodores. I don't know if, personally, I'll speak for myself, I didn't really ever feel like South Carolina was going to pull off this upset. It ended up being a pretty comfortable win in the end for Vandy, and they were without a couple of their star players, which makes it worse for South Carolina. So you were at this game. I want to hear your thoughts. What were your big takeaways from this?
I mean, the big thing we already knew this. It's the shooting from the South Carolina team. It really hurt them. They went 25% from behind the arc. And what hurts so much to watch this team is they are one of the best teams in the nation from inside the arc. And it's like, I think they started the game 0 for 8. Yeah, 0 for 8 they started. I remember at one point, they were like 3 for 5 from inside the arc, but 0 for 7 from outside it. And it's like, it just, so much of it feels like you're watching bad 3-point attempts. If you're getting wide open attempts and drilling them or missing them, whatever, you live with it. But bad attempts, especially when they were having success inside. So it almost felt like they got behind before they really ever had a chance to be in the game. And even that 12-point loss, I think it was a little closer than it really felt watching that. They made a little run at the end, but I know you make the argument that you regress to the mean, but at what point do you kind of say, hey, maybe 25% might be the mean for this team?
Yeah. I think at this point, they have not been shooting the three very well for weeks now. And if your identity is going to be 3-point shooting, it's got to be better than this. Yes. And especially when you don't really have paint presence. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how you make these adjustments. I don't know. It's just, at this point, they have not been shooting the three well for a while now. Yeah. And so it is starting to be a concern. But anything else you want to talk about before we hear from Lamont Paris?
I mean, Nietzsche Johnson, I know. I like watching him play because I can see he really cares. It was a rough start, I think. He missed quite a few bunnies at the rim. But I do like the way he was able to get to the basket. You're not always going to have those days where you're missing those bunnies. So I'd love to see the finishing from him improve. But I think once it does, I mean, he can have games like this where he's scoring 20 and helping them out in conference play, but he's got to make those layups.
Yeah, I agreed. But I do think, I said going into SEC play, I really don't have any expectations for the South Carolina team based off what we saw in the non-con. They're going to have to prove that to me, and I think everyone watching that they can contend in the SEC, because I don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of things that I think look very good and ready for this SEC play, and I kind of still think that after watching that game against Vanderbilt. But after the game, a moment with Jared and Lamont, got attention on social media. And before we talk about it and hear Jared's perspective, I want to let you guys hear it because Jared asked him a question about bringing out the press, which defensively later on in the game, and Lamont's answer. So here is that situation. We'll let you hear it, and then we will talk about it after.
Hey, Coach. I believe it was a double-digit lead down the stretch, with 2 minutes left. Why did you guys wait until it was a little bit around a minute and a half left to start pressing?
Got a lot of basketball coaches in here. Wait, now say it again. Say your question again.
I was asking why you guys waited until it was around a minute and a half left to start pressing. And I'm asking, I want to be educated. I really don't know.
Yeah, because, we were at the 4-minute mark. It was 13 points maybe that we did that. We took a bad 3 at that point, and then so we had moments until I'd say about the 3-minute mark that we had some things going. I mean, we had some things going, and we went zone. We got a couple of stops with that, and then they went bang, bang, and didn't, but it just wasn't our plan. We didn't want to press them. We didn't have to. I don't think we had to press them. We needed to get stops. We had plenty of time. We just needed to get some stops. We didn't get stops. We're not necessarily a pressing team. So when we needed to do it, we did it. I don't know if we generated any steals out of it. We had plenty of time.
So yeah, Lamont, obviously, things are not going well at the moment. Yeah. And, we see this a lot with coaches where you can ask questions that are valid questions, and just depending on the mood that they're in, their response is their response. I thought it was a great question. I thought it was a fair question. You were asking a basketball question, and I think a question that a lot of people were thinking of, hey, you're trying to get back in this game. Why are you not bringing out the press? Or why are you only bringing out the press so late in the game when the game is pretty much won for Vandy? But so I support the question. I thought it was a great question. I thought you did nothing wrong. And, Lamont is obviously upset about the loss. So just give us your perspective on that situation, because it started to get traction on social media.
Right, yeah. So I guess what I saw, I was wondering because,
truly wondering.
With 3 minutes or so left, they were down 17 points. And they had 8 or 9 fouls around then. So I thought that would be a great time to break out the press. But I also considered, okay, maybe he's trying to avoid them going into the double bonus because, if you're pressing, you're trying to get steals. But if you get beat, you might foul or, you don't want those non-shooting fouls to turn into 2 free throw attempts instead of the 1-for-1. But when they finally did break it out, I was like, isn't this, it felt late. So I was wondering because I am not a basketball coach.
Yeah.
And a lot of these opportunities, like while people could say it's grilling the coach, Lamont Paris is an expert of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see, if you're at this level, I see it as you having your doctorate in basketball.
And his teams are good defensively
right.
normally. Yeah.
So I'm like, I want, as me not knowing basketball nearly as much as he does, I want to just dig inside his brain, kind of see, what was your reasoning there? So it was, as someone who doesn't know a ton about basketball, it was confusing to me because I feel like other teams, and from what I've seen elsewhere around both college and pro, I feel like other teams would have broken out the press a little bit earlier, but I didn't know why. And, he said they're not a pressing team, but at some point, you kind of have to be if you're down like that.
Yeah. And I think too, the follow up to that is, what is the identity of this team? In any sense, I don't know if they know that. But anyway, I just wanted you to be able to explain that because it was starting. You said like first few hours it got like 1 like, and you were like, well, no one cares.
Yeah,
and then
I thought nobody cared.
Yeah, and then you woke up and it had gotten a good amount of attention. But it was a very fair, valid question, and Lamont is entitled to feel how he feels.
Yeah. And I give him grace. You just lost. Like they had a rough conference. 2-16 last year, and kind of felt like last year's team continued into this year. So I'm not like.
And I think too, these situations happen in the press room sometimes, and I don't think any of us that are in the situations take it personally. No. I think maybe it looks more personal when you're watching it, as just an outsider that wasn't in the room. But I don't know. These things happen all the time, especially during losing situations. And I don't think Lamont took it personally. I don't think you took it personally. I just think it's just kind of part of the job.
Right.
You just move on. Everyone, just leaves and you're like, all right, see y'all next time. See ya, for the LSU game or whatever it is. So anyway, but it was just a moment that I just wanted to be like, all right, this is, kind of an insight into our lives as journalists as well. As sometimes you got to ask hard questions. Sometimes the coaches won't like the questions, but they're also entitled to answer it however they want to answer it. And that's just the job. And then we go home. So
exactly. And my big thing too is I never want to be in a situation where I have a question and I don't ask because I'm afraid of a response. Because it's like you said, I had that question. There were probably a lot of other people wondering that too. So I don't want to shy away from it just because I feel like I might get a response I don't like. That's what we're there for. That's what we have to be there for.
Unfortunately, when teams are losing, more of the questions are going to be negative just because things are not going well at the moment.
And we don't enjoy asking.
No, we don't.
We don't. I would rather ask about, the player that scored 30 points.
But we'll just see how it keeps going. But anyway, that was just a little insight into that moment that got attention on social media. Jared is an amazing journalist. He, no, we never want to offend anyone or, make anyone uncomfortable. We're not trying to have a gotcha moment with anybody. It's never like that with us. I can say that on behalf of us. It's never like that with us. And so, it just happens in the press room sometimes, and then you move on, and we'll have another press conference tomorrow on Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So that's how it goes. But South Carolina men's basketball is at LSU on Tuesday, their first road SEC game. We'll see how they respond on the road. But again, they're going to have to, I think, prove something to all of us watching that they can really contend in this conference this season, because the SEC in basketball historically maybe not known for being that big of a powerhouse, compared to the ACC, but in recent years, it's gotten so much better, and every single game is going to be competitive. Jared, anything else you want to add from these past few games, this first week of SEC play for Gamecock basketball that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, I think for the men, going forward, it may feel like the struggles of last year might continue, but the one thing I think you got to see last year from this team is everyone is beatable, no matter how. When you talk about SEC basketball, yes, it is so competitive, but they kept it close with the best of the best. And I think you kind of have to have a short memory from last game, obviously learn from it, but that could have been a winnable game. There are winnable games. Again, you don't have to go 2-16 again. I can absolutely see wins on the schedule. No expectations, obviously. Whatever happens, but there's winnable games on the schedule for them for sure.
Yeah, we just got to have patience a little bit. Again, conference play just starting. A lot of basketball to be played, but they're going to try and turn things around down in Baton Rouge on Tuesday. That is it. SEC Hoops has begun. Looking forward to another good week going into this week with both Gamecock men's and women's basketball. He's Jared Parker. I'm Matt Dowell. We'll see you next time here on Thursday with another interview here on South Carolina Sideline. As always, make sure you guys follow us, subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff on YouTube or wherever you listen to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Music, and leave us your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. We love reading the comments, and you guys know your stuff. Gamecock basketball fans know their stuff. So tell us your thoughts after this first week of SEC action for both the women and the men. We love to see what you guys are thinking and saying, and leave us some questions. We want to answer some questions this conference season, and so leave us some questions in the comments that maybe you guys want our insight on. We would love that. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on basketball questions. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, he's Jared. I'm Matt. We'll see you next time here on South Carolina Sideline.